What they didn't know was that inside that old ugly bag was something they missed, something that would one day take everything back. How does a daughter go from being erased from her own home to the one turning the key no one else can touch? It started with the sound of forks clinking on porcelain. Claire's silverware scraped across her plate like nails on a coffin. Claire looked up from her plate without lowering her fork. "Didn't I say I wanted wine with dinner?" I paused mid-step. My fingers clenched the tray tighter. "You didn't say anything about wine." Her lips curled. "Well, I'm saying it now." Across the table, my father coughed. Not a word, not a glance. Just that same nervous throat clear he always did when she got mean. I set the tray down and turned to the kitchen. The heels of Claire's stilettos tapped sharply against the floor as she stood. "You know what?" she called after me. "Never mind the wine." I stopped. "You can leave," she said. "Actually, I insist on it." The house fell silent except for the low hum of the refrigerator. Even the rain outside seemed to pause. I turned slowly, the tiled floor cold beneath my bare feet. "What?" "This trash has been sitting in the closet for too long," she said, lifting the bag like it was diseased. Then with a sudden motion she threw it at my chest. It hit hard, heavier than I remembered, and I stumbled back a step. My throat tightened. "Dad?" But he didn't answer. Just walked to the sink and started rinsing his plate like we were discussing the weather. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to beg him to remember the bedtime stories he used to read, the dances in the kitchen, the way he used to lift me onto his shoulders and call me his little star. But all I could do was whisper, "You promised." Claire snorted. "He promised a lot of things, so did your mother. But people change." She opened the front door. Wind rushed in, slapping my face with cold and the sharp smell of wet leaves. "Out," she said. Still, I hesitated. Claire stepped closer, voice low but full of venom. "You want me to call the cops? Tell them a grown woman is trespassing and refusing to leave? You'd like that, wouldn't you? A record to match your sad little life?" I looked at my father one last time, hoping, praying. He dried his hands on a towel. I stepped outside. The door slammed shut behind me with a sound that echoed like a final verdict. The porch light blinked off. And just like that, I was alone. I walked down the steps. The sidewalk was slick, shining with oil and broken reflections. Every step felt like a betrayal my feet hadn't agreed to. Halfway down the block, I stopped. I turned and looked back. I clutched the bag tighter. My hands were shaking. Not from the cold, from the truth. That house was no longer mine, but I wasn't nothing. I wasn't no one. I took one step forward, then another. The rain didn't let up. Neither did I. As I reached the corner, thunder rolled low in the distance. I ducked under an old bus shelter, water pooling around my shoes. I pulled the bag into my lap and unzipped it with fingers that felt numb. Inside, the scent of lavender and dust. A faded photo of me and Mom at the beach, her arm around my shoulder, her smile, still so alive, and beneath it, something I didn't recognize. I didn't have time to pull it out. The wind howled down the street and I curled into myself, bag clutched like a life raft. "Mom," I whispered into the storm, "what do I do now?" The street light above me flickered once, then died. Darkness swallowed the sidewalk, and with it everything I thought I was, but not everything I could be. Not yet. Not if there was still something in this bag they didn't know about. Not if I still had her. Somewhere. Somehow. The rain didn't stop. I wandered beneath flickering streetlights, their yellow halos bending through the sheets of water. The city looked different from down here. Colder, hungrier, like it was watching me. My shoes squeaked with every step. My jeans were soaked to the skin. People passed, umbrellas up, coats tight. None of them looked at me. And I didn't blame them. Who wants to look at someone already slipping out of the world? Somewhere behind me, a bus rumbled past, splashing water over the curb. I didn't flinch, I just kept walking. And then the shadows lengthened. The lights thinned out, the air grew sharp. I turned into an alley, hoping to find someplace dry, a stairwell, a ledge, a miracle. Instead, I heard laughter. 3 men leaned against a graffiti-tagged wall near a flickering neon sign that read, "Bar." One of them looked up as I passed. His grin widened. "Hey, sweetheart, cold night, huh?" I lowered my head and kept moving. "Where you going in such a hurry?" another called out. His boots scraped the pavement. I broke into a run. They weren't following, but my heart didn't believe that. I didn't stop until the street opened into a half-finished construction site. Cement pillars, broken scaffolding, puddles stretching like bruises across the dirt. I ducked behind a pile of metal beams and collapsed onto a patch of gravel. It was quiet here. Not safe, but quiet. I crawled into a large concrete pipe lying on its side, the kind meant to be buried underground. It smelled like damp metal and mildew, but at least it had a roof. I curled up, pulling the canvas bag onto my chest. The strap clutched like a seatbelt. My teeth chattered. My skin felt raw, but the fear was finally giving way to exhaustion. I don't remember how long I sat there before I opened the bag. Inside, everything was damp but still intact. A folded flannel, a worn photo album, and then tucked between two sleeves of plastic, a paper, folded once, thick, yellowed at the edges. I held it like it might fall apart if I breathed too hard. There was no light, not enough to read it, but something about it felt important. I slid it back inside and zipped the bag shut. I stepped back out of the pipe and scanned the site. There was a rusted faucet near a stack of bricks, leaking a steady trickle into a tin bucket. I staggered over, cupped my hands, and drank. It tasted like rust and rain, but it was wet and real. I wiped my mouth with my sleeve and leaned back against the wall, sliding down until my knees touched my chest. I pulled the bag close, resting my cheek on it like a pillow. My mother's voice echoed in my head. "This house will always be yours." Was that a promise? Or just a lie she told herself to sleep better? I whispered, "I'm still here, Mom." Not sure who I was trying to convince. The wind howled through the rebar like a warning. Instead, I felt the sharp corner of something inside the bag pressing against my ribs. The folded paper. I don't know why, but a part of me started to believe that maybe whatever was in there wasn't just old junk. Maybe Claire had tossed me out too fast to check. Maybe she missed something. Either way, I had nothing left to lose, except that paper, except that bag. I pulled it tighter and let the cold air settle over me like a second skin. I could still hear the men's laughter from earlier, still feel the slam of that door, still taste the silence my father left me in. And that's when I realized they thought this was the end of my story, but it was just the prologue. A car drove by on the far side of the lot. Headlights sliced across the concrete, then vanished. I ducked deeper into the pipe and waited. For morning, for a sign, for whatever came next. A dull smear of gray pushing its way through the clouds, lighting the edges of the city like an afterthought. I blinked awake inside the concrete pipe, my body stiff and damp. My neck ached. My fingers were curled so tightly around the strap of my mother's bag, I had to pry them open one by one. The construction site around me had changed overnight. The ghosts of the night had vanished, replaced by the rustle of paper trash caught in the breeze, the distant honk of a horn, the soft rumble of a city waking up without me. I stepped out of the pipe and into the chill. No one noticed me, not the man in the coat rushing past, not the woman sipping coffee at the bus stop. I was invisible, a blur in wet clothes, a girl-shaped gap in the world. I leaned against a metal beam, pressing the heel of my hand into my gut like that would silence it. "Hey," I turned. "You look like you need this more than I do," he said. He held out half a loaf of bread, stale, split down the middle. I stared at it, then at him. I wanted to ask why, or how he knew, or what the catch was. But all I could say was, "Thank you." I took it with both hands. My voice cracked just saying it. He sat on a concrete block nearby, pulling his coat tighter. I sat too, across from him, not too close. We ate in silence for a few minutes. The crust was tough, but it filled the hollowness in my chest. Or maybe it just distracted from it. He watched me for a while, then said, "Name's Jessie." "Lily. You from around here?" I hesitated. I was. He nodded like he understood, like he didn't need the rest of the story to recognize the shape of it. He tilted his head toward my bag. "That all you got?" Yeah. He didn't ask what was in it, just looked at me and said, "That bag means something." I looked down. The strap was fraying, the fabric stained, but it held pieces of my mother, of who I used to be. "I guess it does," I said. "This kept me alive," he said. "For years." I blinked. "What is it?" "Shoeshine kit," he said. "Wasn't much, but it was honest. Built routine, built peace." He ran his fingers across the brush bristles like they were holy. "Take it," he added. I froze. "What?" "It's yours now." I stared at him, at the kit, at his rough hands and cracked nails and the calm in his voice. "Why would you give this to me?" He shrugged. "You look like someone who ain't done yet." I swallowed hard. My eyes burned. "I don't know what I'm doing." "No one does," he said, "but you've still got fight in your eyes. That's more than most." He slid the kit across the concrete between us. It stopped at my knee. I picked it up slowly. The wood was smooth in places, rough in others, heavy with use and stories I'd never know. "I can't repay you," I whispered. "You don't have to," he said. "Just don't let them decide who you get to be." That hit me harder than I wanted to admit. I stared at the kit in my lap. It was old. It was worn. But it was a tool, a start. And I needed a start more than anything. "I'll try," I said. He smiled. Not wide, just enough. "Where do you go now?" I asked. He looked out toward the street. "Wherever I'm not told to leave." I nodded. He stood, pulling his coat tighter around his frame. "Good luck, Lily." And just like that, he walked away. No fanfare, no goodbyes, just a stranger who gave me more than food. He gave me direction. I stayed in that construction site a little longer, cleaned the brush, organized the tins, memorized how he had them placed. I didn't even know how to shine a shoe, but I sat down anyway, laid the kit open beside me, and waited. The first man passed without slowing, so did the second. The third looked down, hesitated, then kept going. My chest tightened. My hands clenched in my lap. Maybe I was stupid for thinking this would work. Then a woman in a gray skirt stopped. She looked down at me, at my kit, at my hopeful eyes. "You shine shoes?" I swallowed. "Yes, just $1. She hesitated, then sat on the nearby bench and extended her foot. I opened the kit, picked up the brush with trembling fingers. I started slow, wiping away dust, adding polish, rubbing small circles like Jessie said. My hands found a rhythm I didn't know I had. When I finished, I looked up. She smiled. "Thank you." She handed me a crumpled dollar bill. I stared at it like it was 100. "Keep going, kid," she said, and walked away. I looked down at the dollar, at my stained fingers, at the kit. It was more than money. It was proof that I still existed, that maybe, just maybe, I could earn something back. It was holding a future. I just hadn't unzipped the right part yet. The sidewalk was warm under me now. People walked by with coffee cups and briefcases, their shoes tapping out rhythms of lives that had purpose and direction. Every once in a while, one would stop. I'd smile, ask softly if they wanted a shine. Most said no, but some didn't. A few bucks here, a few kind glances there. I wasn't invisible anymore. By the third day, my hands were raw from polish and concrete, but my heart was holding steady. The kit Jessie gave me sat open at my side like a badge of something bigger than survival. It was the first thing I'd been trusted with in years. I adjusted the brush, pressing the bristles tighter to the heel of a businessman's shoe, my thumb aching from repetition. I had just started the second foot when I heard it. That laugh. Not the carefree kind, the cruel kind, mocking, sharp. I froze, eyes locked on the scuffed leather in front of me. My stomach turned. I didn't need to look up to know. I looked up anyway. 3 men leaned against a parked black SUV nearby. They weren't strangers. One of them wore a gold chain I remembered from Claire's birthday party last year. Her nephew. Except she never had a nephew. The second guy grinned, pointing. "Thought I recognized that face. Didn't expect to see you squatting on sidewalks." The businessman whose shoes I was shining frowned. "Everything all right?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, sorry." He looked at the men, then back at me. He stood up quickly, pulling his wallet. "Keep the change," he muttered, handing me a 10, and walked off briskly. I tried to breathe, tried to go back to cleaning my brush, organizing the kit, but the laughter crept closer. "Courtesy visit from your stepmom," the tallest one said, kicking the edge of my box with the toe of his boot. "She says you're giving the family a bad image." I gripped the kit with both hands. My jaw clenched so tight it made my temples throb. "Leave me alone," I whispered. One of them crouched down, inches from my face. He smiled like a snake. "Claire sends her love." The sound made my chest crack open. I lunged forward, scrambling to gather the pieces. "Stop! Please!" Another kick sent the polished tin rolling into the street. The third guy snorted. "Should have just stayed gone." Then they were gone, just like that, as if they'd never been there. But they had been, and the kit was broken. The wood had split where it hit the curb. One of the hinges hung loose. The polished tins were dented, half open, bleeding dark streaks into the cracks of the sidewalk. I sat there, breath shallow, hands shaking. A few people walked past. None of them stopped. I didn't blame them. I didn't even look up until the sky started turning gray again. Evening creeping in like a second round. I should have packed up, should have moved, but I stayed. I took the busted kit in my lap and started fixing what I could, lining up the tins, wiping off the brushes, polishing the box with the same cloth I used on strangers' shoes, because that kit was the only thing someone gave me without expecting anything in return, and I wouldn't let her win. Not like this. Claire had sent them. She wasn't done. She was scared. And she was trying to break me before I did, but it was too late for that. You stop breaking, you start sharpening. I wrapped a cloth around the broken hinge, pulled it tight. It wouldn't hold forever, but it would hold tonight. I found a new corner, not far but slightly out of sight. I sat back down, and I waited. The light was fading when a man in a charcoal suit stopped, looked down at me, and hesitated. "Rough day?" he asked. I blinked. His voice was low, kind. I forced a nod. "You could say that." He looked at my kit, the cracked wood, the bruises on my knuckles. Then he sat. "I've got court in 20 minutes. These things are a mess." I got to work. But inside something was boiling. Not rage, not sadness. Something quieter, heavier, resolve. I finished his shoes, handed him the rag for the final buff. He looked down and smiled. "Clean work," he said. "How much?" "Just $1? He raised a brow. "For that effort?" I shrugged. "Trying to keep things honest." He pulled out his wallet, handed me a 20. Then something strange happened. He reached into his breast pocket and took out a business card, handed it to me. I stared at the card. Andrew Lewis, attorney at law. He smiled, stood, and walked away before I could say thank you. I looked at the card in my hand. The edges were sharp, clean, like possibility. The broken box at my feet, the bag beside me, the $10 in my pocket. And now this. Maybe they hadn't buried me. Maybe they just handed me a shovel. It had been 2 days since I met the man in the charcoal suit. 2 days since I tucked his business card into the front pocket of my mother's bag like it was made of gold leaf. I didn't know if I'd ever use it, but I looked at it every night, like it could remind me that not everyone walked past, that maybe someone saw me. The next morning I was back at my corner. Same spot, same broken kit. I'd patched it up with duct tape someone left behind. Not pretty, but it held. My fingers were steadier now, more confident. It's funny how muscle remembers what your heart wants to forget. Same tailored suit, same hurried stride, a briefcase this time. He was on the phone, mid-conversation, walking fast. My heart jumped, but I stayed seated. But then he slowed, stopped, looked down at me. I looked up at him. He gave me a small nod. "You still shining?" I nodded. "Yes, sir." He hung up the call, crouched slightly, and placed his briefcase beside the bench. Then he sat down and extended one foot. I pulled the brush from the kit and got to work. His shoes were cleaner than most, but I took my time. Made it count. He watched me, arms folded, his expression unreadable. "You've got good technique," he said. "Thank you." "I noticed the kit's been through a war." I almost smiled. "Yeah, but it still works. Like its owner, I'm guessing." I paused. The brush stopped in mid-stroke. My throat tightened, but I said nothing. He didn't push, just leaned back and let me finish. When I was done, I reached for the rag and gave the final polish, wiping the leather until it shone like oil-slick glass. "There," I said softly. They look ready for a courtroom." He looked down and nodded. "They do." He reached into his wallet and handed me a 20. "You already paid," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "Then consider this a retainer." My brow furrowed. "For what?" "For being honest, and for doing a job well, even when no one's looking." He picked up his briefcase. "Do you have a place to stay?" The question hit me sideways. I shook my head once. "I'm okay." He studied me a second longer, then took out another card. This one looked different, handwritten on the back. I took it, hands trembling, trying to memorize the script on the back before it could disappear. I meant what I said. "You're sharp. You've got the eyes of someone who's paying attention." And then he was gone, like a gust of wind. I stared after him. For the first time in weeks, I felt the smallest flicker of power return to my bones. It didn't last long. Later that day, as I packed up, I noticed something off. When I got back to the construction site, I sat down in my usual spot. Concrete walls, rusted beams, distant traffic humming like static. I unzipped the bag. There it was again, that thick piece of folded paper I hadn't dared to open since that night in the pipe. I pulled it out. The edges were crisp, the paper firm, like parchment. I unfolded it slowly, carefully, breath held like I was diffusing a bomb. My mother's, flowing, deliberate, sharp where it needed to be. It wasn't a letter, it was a will, a handwritten will. I read the first line aloud under my breath. "I, Margaret Hart, being of sound mind and body." My chest caved in. A gasp slipped out. "Leave all my personal assets and real property located at 243 Willoughby Street to my daughter, Lily Hart." I stopped reading. The construction site disappeared. The city, the shoes, even the ache in my stomach. She hadn't just said it when she was dying. She had written it. She had planned it. And Claire had known. That's why she wanted me out. Why she didn't even give me time to go through drawers or closets. Why she tossed this bag at me like trash. Because she didn't want me to find this. My mother had left me the house, legally, clearly, in her own handwriting. And I had been sleeping on sidewalks while Claire redecorated my bedroom. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I couldn't. Not now. Not when I finally had something that wasn't just hope. It was proof. I refolded the will with trembling hands, tucked it into the inner pocket of the bag like it was sacred. Then I pulled out Andrew's card again. His name looked different now. Not just a kind stranger, but a bridge. I had something to show him, something that could change everything. I realized something else. If Claire knew this will still existed, she'd do anything to stop me from using it. She would soon. The morning light had teeth. I'd read it 3 times since sunrise. Each word hit harder than the last. All personal assets and real property. To my daughter, Lily Hart. She meant for me to have it. No conditions, no confusion. So why did I feel like I was holding something forbidden? But the real world didn't care about promises, especially not the kind written in cursive and buried at the bottom of a canvas bag. Still, it was something. And I wasn't going to let it go. I needed answers. I needed help. And I knew exactly where to go. I looked like trouble, but I walked in anyway. The lobby was polished marble and soft lighting. A woman behind the desk glanced up with a practiced smile that flickered when she saw me. "Can I help you?" I stepped forward, clutching the bag tighter. "I'm here to see Andrew Lewis." She blinked. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but he told me to come if I needed help." She took it slowly, looked it over. Her expression softened. "Wait here a moment," she said. I stood there, hands sweating, pretending not to notice the suited people eyeing me like I didn't belong. My breath felt too loud, my heart louder. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Finally, the receptionist returned. "Mr. Lewis will see you now. Down the hall, last door on the left." I walked slowly, afraid the opportunity might vanish if I moved too fast. Andrew stood as I entered, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. His office was lined with casebooks and framed degrees, but nothing about it felt cold. He nodded. "You came." "I hope that's okay," I said quietly. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit. Let's talk." I sat. The bag rested on my lap like an anchor. "I found something," I said, voice shaking. Something I think you need to see. I opened the zipper and pulled out the folded paper, smoothing it across his desk like it was holy. Andrew leaned in, eyes narrowing as he read. Then he read it again. When he looked up, his face had changed, serious, focused. "This is a handwritten will," he said. "Entirely in your mother's handwriting?" I nodded. "And you've had it since the night you left?" Claire threw the bag at me. I didn't even know it was in there. He sat back, fingers steepled. This could be huge. If it holds up legally, it overrides any claim Claire's making. I blinked. "You mean I might actually get the house back?" He didn't smile. "It's not guaranteed, but it's real leverage. We'd need to verify the handwriting, get a witness. Maybe someone who knew your mom well, anyone she might have confided in." My stomach turned. "There's one person, Mrs. Harper, my mom's best friend. Think she'd be willing to talk?" "She always said she'd protect me, if Claire didn't scare her off." Andrew nodded. "Then that's our next step." He pulled out a legal pad and started jotting notes. The sound of pen on paper was rhythmic, reassuring. I sat in silence, watching him work, and for a moment I let myself believe things might turn, until he looked up again, brows knit. "Lily, Claire's not stupid. If she suspects you've found this, she won't sit quietly." "I know," I said. "She already sent people after me once." He frowned. "What do you mean?" I told him. "About the 3 men, the smashed kit, the message they delivered." His jaw tightened. "That crosses a line." "She's capable of worse," I whispered. "You don't know her like I do." "I will," he said. "But we're not going to let her get ahead of this." He handed me a folder. "Take this. It's a copy of what we'll file when the time comes. For now, keep the original will safe, and don't let anyone else know you've got it." I nodded, slipping the papers back into the bag. As I stood to leave, Andrew's voice softened. "You did the right thing coming here, Lily. You're not alone anymore." I didn't cry, but I almost did. I stepped out into the late afternoon light, bag hugged close to my chest, the folder tucked under my arm. I didn't notice the man across the street at first, not until I felt eyes on me. He was standing half hidden behind a newspaper stand, plain jacket, ball cap low, but he wasn't reading. He was watching me. My breath caught. I turned quickly, headed toward the bus stop, resisting the urge to look back. Claire knew, or someone did, and if they were watching now, then I was already in danger. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, the city felt different. Too quiet in some places, too loud in others. My nerves were on edge, like I was waiting for something to pounce. But fear wasn't the same thing as paralysis, and Andrew had given me a next step. Mrs. Harper, the woman who used to braid my hair when Mom was too tired, who once told me I'd grow up to be stronger than my mother ever was. I hadn't seen her in years. I stood at her front gate with my fist clenched, the bag slung tight across my body. My fingers hovered over the latch. Would she even remember me? Would she want to? I took a breath and pushed the gate open. It groaned. I stepped onto the porch and knocked. The door creaked open a few inches, then widened. "Lily?" Her voice cracked on the second syllable. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Hi, Mrs. Harper." She reached out and touched my cheek, her fingers trembling. "Oh, honey, what happened to you?" Everything wanted to pour out at once, but I just said, "I need your help." She led me inside. Her living room smelled like lemon tea and old books, the kind of place you could pretend the world hadn't gone cruel. We sat. I held the folded will like it might disintegrate. When I placed it in her hands, she read it slowly, lips moving with each line. When she finished, she looked up, eyes glassy. "I remember this," she said softly. "Your mother showed it to me. She wrote it the week she came back from the hospital, said she didn't trust lawyers anymore, said Claire had been poking around the paperwork." "She did," Mrs. Harper said. "Said she didn't care what Mark thought. Said the bag would protect you when she couldn't." The bag. That canvas thing Claire tried to throw away like garbage. I clutched the strap tighter. "I need you to say that again," I whispered, "to someone who can make it count." Mrs. Harper nodded. "I will." We sat there for a while in silence, the wind chimes tapping gently outside. It felt like peace, like the kind I hadn't known in months. But peace doesn't last when people like Claire are involved. "She remembers the will," I said, sliding him a new handwritten note with Mrs. Harper's statement. "And she's willing to testify." Andrew scanned the paper. "That's good, really good." He turned to his laptop and opened a document. Legal terms scrolled across the screen. I didn't understand all of it, but I knew enough to recognize momentum. "We're starting to build a foundation," he said. "But we need more." He pulled out a slim folder. "I did some digging. Your mom died unexpectedly, yes?" I nodded. "They said it was a stroke, but she was fine just days before." Andrew tapped the folder. According to her medical records, there were discrepancies, tests run, consultations Claire didn't disclose, and oddly, the lawyer who handled the estate had only been in practice 6 months. My heart dropped. "I think Claire wanted control, and she might have manipulated your father into making quick decisions after your mother's death." I gritted my teeth. My jaw ached. "He let her." "He might have, or he might have been lied to as well." I shook my head. "No, he saw her throw me out. He stood there." Andrew didn't argue. A weight sank into my chest. "That's impossible." He leaned forward. "Claire moved fast. Too fast." I pressed my palms into my thighs. "So what now?" "We go deeper," he said. "Find out who handled the filing, who witnessed it, and whether anything's missing." He paused. "Do you still have the original envelope the will was in?" I shook my head. "Just the paper." "Even so," he said, "we've got enough to bring forward a challenge." He stood, walked toward the window, looking out. "There's something else," he said without turning around. "After you left yesterday, I got a strange call. Someone asking if you'd been here. Said they were with the family, no name." My stomach flipped. "Do you think they know?" He turned to face me. "I think they're trying to find out how much we know." I gripped the edge of the chair. This wasn't just about greed anymore. It was about control, and secrets, and silence. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Not exactly. I looked up at him. "Then we move faster." He smiled faintly. "I thought you might say that." As I left the office, I kept one hand on the bag at all times. I didn't care if I looked paranoid. Someone was following me. I just didn't know who yet. But I'd find out. Soon. My phone buzzed while I was crouched beneath the awning of a closed sandwich shop, waiting out a sudden downpour. A number I didn't recognize. For a second, I froze. Then I picked up. "Lily?" My father's voice. I hadn't heard it since the night he stood there and watched Claire throw me out like a stray dog. My chest went still, then thudded. "Why are you calling me?" I want to see you. Just talk, please." I said nothing. There was something in his voice, strained, tired, maybe real, maybe not. I gave him nothing for 5 whole seconds, then, "Where?" "Elman 14th, that cafe on the corner, in an hour." He hung up before I could say yes. I don't know why I went. I arrived early. The cafe smelled like cinnamon and espresso. Warmth pressed against my cheeks as I stepped inside. It was nearly empty. Just an elderly couple near the window, and a teenager tapping on her phone in the back. And then, my father. He looked older, more sunken. His suit was neat, but his shoulders drooped. He stood when he saw me. "Lily?" I didn't sit yet. "Why now?" He sighed, motioning toward the chair across from him. "Please." I sat. He stared at the table for a second, then at me. "I made mistakes. I know that." My arms crossed instinctively. "You think?" He swallowed. "I didn't mean to hurt you. You watched her do it." "No," I said. "She's exactly who I think she is. You're the one I don't recognize." He winced. "I didn't call to defend myself. I want you to stop this, the legal stuff, the fighting." That was it. The whole reason he reached out. "I'm not stopping," I said. He looked up, almost pleading. "She'll ruin you. You don't understand what she's capable of." I leaned in, voice steady. "No, Dad, you don't understand what I'm capable of." That's when the bell over the door jingled. Claire. Of course. She swept in like she owned the air, heels tapping, lips painted too red for a daylight hour. She slid into the seat beside him like we were all old friends catching up. "I told you she'd come," she said, smirking at my father. Then her eyes met mine. "Still wearing that ratty little bag, huh?" I didn't flinch. "You lied to me," I said. "You forged things, burned things." Claire tilted her head, amused. "Oh, honey, accusations are only dangerous when you can prove them." "I can." Something flickered in her eyes. She sat back. "Then let's talk like adults." "No," I said. "Let's not." I pressed the bag against my side and stood. "But then," Claire slipped, just for a second, "you're wasting everyone's time, clinging to that old bag like it's going to save you. You think your mom wrote something real, something that'll hold up? Please." I froze. My father's gaze snapped toward her. She realized it too late. "What did you say?" he asked. But it was enough. I pulled out my phone from my jacket pocket and hit stop. The voice memo played back with perfect clarity. "You think your mom wrote something real, something that'll hold up?" I'd hit record the moment I stepped inside, just in case. Claire's face went cold. "That won't mean anything in court," I smiled. "No, but it means something to me, and to him." Mark looked like he'd been slapped. "You knew?" She said nothing. I turned to leave. "You walk away now, Lily, and you'll regret it," she hissed. "No," I said, not even looking back. "You will." I walked quickly, heart racing, the bag bouncing lightly against my hip. 1 block, 2 blocks, then I paused. Someone was following me. Again. I ducked into a bookstore, pressed myself behind a rack of calendars, and waited. He passed the window 5 seconds later. Baseball cap, gray windbreaker, same build as the man from the newspaper stand. I slipped out the back entrance into the alley and didn't stop moving until I hit 9th and Lexington. This wasn't paranoia anymore. Someone wanted that will, badly, and now they knew I had it. Courtrooms are colder than they look in movies. Not just the temperature, though the air conditioning rattled against my bones. It was the silence, the weight of it. Like every breath echoed off the walls, measured and judged before you even opened your mouth. Claire was across the aisle, dressed in gray that tried to look modest, but the heels were still too tall, the smirk still too sharp, and next to her, my father. He didn't look at me. I wasn't sure if that made it easier or worse. The judge entered, and everyone rose. He looked older than I expected, stern, unimpressed, the kind of man who'd seen every lie, every story, every sob. We sat again. "Let's proceed," he said. Andrew stood, calm, measured. "Your Honor, we're here to challenge the existing will submitted by Claire Bennett and Mark Hart on behalf of the deceased, Margaret Hart." He slid the original will across the table. "We present a handwritten testament, authored solely by the deceased, naming her biological daughter, Lily Hart, as the sole heir of the Willoughby property and its contents." The judge took the paper, read silently. I couldn't breathe. Claire shifted in her seat. Her nails tapped once against the table. Andrew continued. "We also have sworn testimony from Margaret Hart's closest friend and confidant, Helen Harper, confirming the will's authenticity and the deceased's expressed intent. Margaret told me she didn't trust anyone near her paperwork, not after what she found in Claire's desk. She said she wanted Lily protected. She made me promise that if anything ever happened, I'd make sure her daughter got the house." The judge looked at her. "And you believe this will reflects that intent?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "I do." Claire's attorney stood next, polished, smug. "Your Honor, with all due respect to Miss Harper, this is hearsay. The original will on file was notarized, witnessed, and submitted through the proper channels. This handwritten document has no legal standing without forensic verification." Andrew didn't flinch. "We've already submitted handwriting analysis from a certified document examiner. It's consistent with over a dozen verified letters from the deceased." The judge nodded slowly. Then Claire stood. She didn't have to, but of course she did. "I only ever did what I thought was best for Lily," she said, her voice syrup thick. "Mark and I stepped in because Margaret was declining rapidly. She was confused, scared." I clenched my jaw. Andrew stood again. "And yet, in the official will submitted to probate, Lily's name doesn't appear at all, not even as a minor heir, despite living in the house, despite being Margaret's only child." The judge nodded. "That is notable." Claire blinked. Andrew walked to the projector and displayed hospital records, highlighted dates, missing entries. Furthermore, we discovered that Margaret's medical records were selectively redacted. Several tests and consultations disappeared from her file after Claire gained medical power of attorney. The judge looked toward Mark. Finally, my father spoke. "She didn't tell me," he said, voice low. Claire snapped toward him. "Excuse me?" Mark stood, eyes glassy. "I thought we were doing the right thing, but I never saw this will. I didn't know Margaret had written anything like it." Claire hissed, "Sit down." But Mark didn't. His hands were trembling, but he faced the judge. "I don't know what's true anymore. But Lily, she deserves to be heard." I couldn't breathe. For the first time in forever, he said my name like it mattered. The judge cleared his throat. "I've seen enough." He looked at me, then at Claire. "The court finds that the handwritten will is valid under state law due to consistent handwriting, credible testimony, and substantial circumstantial evidence." I blinked. "I hereby order the immediate transfer of the Willoughby property to the named beneficiary, Lily Hart." Everything blurred. Andrew touched my shoulder. "You did it!" But I couldn't move. Across the room, Claire was frozen, mouth slightly open like the ruling hadn't registered. Then her jaw tightened. Her nails dug into her palms. And my father? He was crying, silently. The courtroom emptied around us. One by one, people left. But I stayed seated, fingers still brushing the edge of the folder. I had the house, my mother's house, but it didn't feel like victory, not yet. Outside the courthouse, the light had changed. The sky hung heavy, thick with coming rain. I stepped out with Andrew beside me. "Claire will appeal," he said. "You know that, right?" "I'm counting on it," I said. He gave me a look. "You want this to keep going?" I shook my head. "I want everything out, every secret, every lie. I want her exposed." We walked in silence toward the curb. Andrew flagged down a cab. I turned back to glance at the courthouse steps. That's when I saw him again, ball cap, gray windbreaker, still watching. And this time, he wasn't alone. The key trembled between my fingers. This wasn't just about getting the house back. It was about finally being let back in. I pushed the front door open. I stepped inside and shut the door behind me. Silence folded over the house like a quilt. Everything looked smaller, the walls closer, the hallway narrower. Maybe because the girl who used to live here was gone. But the floor still creaked in the same places. The stairs still bowed on the fourth step. And above the mantel, the faint outline of my mother's photo frame still lingered in the paint. They'd tried to erase her. They hadn't finished the job. In the kitchen, the cabinets were rearranged. But when I opened the third drawer, the same bent fork I'd refused to throw out was still tucked in the back. They never saw the details. They never saw her. My hand gripped the counter edge. This was mine. I moved upstairs slowly, each creaking step sounding like a memory. My old room door was closed. I turned the knob. Inside, the walls had been painted white, covering the soft lilac I'd begged for in 8th grade. The curtains were stiff, new, the bedspread unfamiliar, but the closet still had the sticker I put up when I was 13. A glittery star. Half peeled now, but there. I reached out and pressed my palm against it. And suddenly, I was back. 13 years old, sitting cross-legged on the floor with Mom, sorting through old records and laughing about the names of bands she used to love. Her hair tied back, her eyes glowing with mischief. "You're gonna outgrow this room someday," she said. "I don't want to," I told her. "Then let it grow with you." And now, it had. I sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped differently than I remembered. I ran my fingers along the bedpost. I froze. Andrew wasn't supposed to come until later. I made my way down, heart ticking like a clock wound too tight. When I opened the door, it wasn't him. It was Mark, my father. "I heard you got the key," he said. "You heard right," I said. "What do you want?" I wanted to see it one more time. The house." I didn't answer. He looked up. "You don't have to let me in. I know I don't deserve it." He was right, but I stepped aside anyway. He walked in slowly, his eyes scanning the place like it was both familiar and foreign. "She kept it exactly how she wanted it, huh?" I didn't respond. We stood in the entryway together, silence sitting between us. "I remember when we bought this place," he said. She cried in this hallway, said she finally felt safe. He touched the corner of the banister. And I ruined that. I folded my arms. Why are you really here, Dad? He turned, looked straight at me. I knew about the will. It hit like a slap. I didn't want to believe she'd cut me out completely, he said, voice thin. Claire told me it was just a draft, that Margaret had changed her mind before she passed. I stared at him. And you believed her? I wanted to, he admitted, because the truth meant facing what I let happen, what I helped happen. The ache in my chest bloomed all over again. You could have stopped it, I whispered. You watched her throw me out. He nodded, tears in his eyes. And I'll never forgive myself for that. The room spun with silence. I can't undo what I did, he said, but maybe I can help repair what I broke. I didn't speak. He stepped back toward the door. This house is yours. It always should have been. I just hope someday when you're ready, you'll let me be part of the person you become in it. He stepped outside, but before the door shut, I said it. You made your choice. He paused. And I'm making mine. I closed the door, this time from the inside. I turned and leaned against it, breathing hard. I hadn't expected the anger to feel like grief. I hadn't expected grief to feel like peace. But it did. I was home. And now, finally, I could decide who else got to be here with me. The house was quiet again, but the kind of quiet that invited thought, not fear. I moved to the living room and opened my mother's photo album, flipping to the first page. A baby photo. Me, in her arms. And then I heard it. A knock. 3, soft, deliberate, but I hadn't called anyone. I looked through the peephole. No one was there, just an envelope on the mat. I opened the door, picked it up, and stepped back inside. It was unmarked. I peeled it open. Inside, a photo, black and white, old, but clear. Claire, in a hospital hallway, holding a file, smiling. I stared at the photo for a long time. It wasn't just a picture. It was a thread, one more piece of the knot I was finally unraveling. But that could wait, because there was someone I owed everything to. Jesse. It had been weeks since I'd last seen him. Since the stale bread, the cracked shoe kit, and the quiet kindness of a stranger who saw me when I was invisible. I packed a paper bag with food, filled 2 thermoses with hot coffee, and stepped out into the golden light of a late fall morning. The sidewalks shimmered with a thin layer of frost, the wind just sharp enough to sting. I passed the corner where I used to sit, knees tucked under me, hoping for $1 and a little dignity. He wasn't there. I checked another block, then another. Hey, I said softly. He looked up. His face cracked into a crooked smile. Well, if it isn't the girl with fire in her bones. I knelt down beside him, holding out the bag. Thought you might want breakfast. He chuckled, eyeing it with suspicion. You didn't spit in it, did you? Only a little. He took the bag, opened it, and whistled low. Real coffee and a sandwich? This a holiday I forgot about? No, I said. It's just, thank you. He chewed quietly for a minute before speaking. You look different. I blinked. Different how? He squinted at me. Like someone who found the thing she thought was gone. I didn't answer, just looked down at the steam rising from my cup. I got the house back, I said. He paused mid-bite. I stood in the room where my mom used to braid my hair, I continued, and for the first time, it felt like I belonged there again. He nodded slowly. That's good, Lily. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a brass key on a thin leather loop. Here, I said. He looked at it, confused. It's to the back door. There's a guest room, heat, clean bed, and a lock on the door if that helps. His expression didn't change at first. Then he blinked, looked away. I'm not a charity case. I know, I said. Your family. He set down the sandwich carefully, like it was suddenly too heavy. You sure? He whispered. Once I walk in there, I'll leave footprints. I won't be invisible anymore. That's the point, I said. Come home. He held the key in his hand for a long time. Then he nodded. I'll come by tonight, he said, when the city quiets down. We sat there a while longer, drinking lukewarm coffee, watching traffic crawl by like life returning to normal. And for a few minutes, I felt okay. Maybe more than okay. Later that evening, I stood in the living room, lighting the fireplace for the first time in years. The flames crackled, filling the house with a warmth that didn't come from just heat. On the mantel, I placed a small photo of my mom. Just her smile, just her eyes. I whispered, "We're not done yet, but I'm here, and I'm still standing." There was a knock at the door. I opened it. Jesse stood on the porch, holding his kit in one hand and a grocery bag in the other. He looked nervous, like he was about to ruin something delicate. "Didn't come empty-handed," he said. I stepped aside. "Come in." He crossed the threshold slowly, his eyes scanning the room like a museum he wasn't allowed to touch. "You can put your stuff in the guest room. First door on the right." He nodded, walked in, didn't say much. Just set his things down, sat on the edge of the bed, and let out a long breath. "You good?" I asked. He looked up. "I'm better." Later, we sat on the porch together, wrapped in mismatched blankets, sipping peppermint tea. The stars were out, sharp and cold against the navy sky. Jesse nudged my shoulder. "Told you that kit would take you places." "You were right." He laughed softly. "Don't get used to hearing that." We sat in silence. Then I pulled the photo from my pocket. He took one look and stilled. "That's her." "You know the hallway?" "St. Joseph's," he said. "I used to deliver packages there before things went south." I turned the photo over. A date was scribbled on the back in blue ink. 3 days before my mother died. "Someone left this at my door," I whispered. "Who?" "I don't know." Jesse took the photo again. "She's holding a file." "I think it's medical." He looked at me. "You think she had something to do with—" "I don't know yet," I said, "but I'm going to find out. It wasn't staying hidden anymore." I didn't sleep that night. I watched the flames in the fireplace flicker low, then fade, the coals glowing like buried memories. Jesse had gone to bed hours ago, but I sat there, holding the photo in my hands, turning it over and over until my fingertips smudged the edges. St. Joseph's. 3 days before my mother died. Claire wasn't supposed to be there. And yet, there she was, holding what I now knew was a medical file. My mother's file. There was only one person left who could explain why. I found Claire 2 days later. She was sitting on the patio of a downtown cafe, sipping something in a glass too delicate for her cold hands. Still flawless, still sharp, but she didn't expect me to walk up and pull out the photo. "You lied." Her eyes flicked to the photo, then up to me. "That depends," she said, "on what you think the truth is." "You were at the hospital," I said, "before the coroner, before the lawyer, before she died. You had her records, and you never told me." Claire exhaled, slow and icy. "I did what I had to do." "You forged the will," I said louder. "You made my father believe she left everything to him, to you, but she didn't. She left it to me." She tilted her head. "And how exactly did you find that out?" I opened the bag. Her lips pressed together. "That bag was supposed to stay shut." I leaned in. "You made one mistake." "Oh?" she said. "Just one?" "You underestimated how much she loved me." The silence between us stretched taut like a thread about to snap. She finally said, "You were always weak, Lily. Soft, crying in corners, clinging to fairy tales. You wouldn't have lasted a year in this family's world." I stood up. "I lasted just fine without you." I didn't scream. I didn't throw water in her face. I just walked away. But in that moment, I knew something had shifted. The next few weeks moved fast. The house was mine. Officially. So was every penny Claire had tried to steal. She didn't show up in court. I heard she left town. Some whispered that Gregory followed her. Others said she went alone, bitter and broke. I didn't care. I stood in the garden behind my house, hands deep in the soil, planting something for the first time in years. Not flowers, vegetables, real things, things that could feed people. Jesse watched from the porch, sipping coffee and nodding like I'd finally gotten it. And maybe I had. One morning I walked into the guest room and found a note on Jesse's pillow. "I got a job out west, something honest. I'll send a postcard. You gave me more than food and a bed. You gave me back my name." Jay. I cried. Not because he left, but because he left standing tall. As for me, I framed it, hung it above the fireplace. It wasn't just her goodbye, it was her permission. Months passed. And every now and then a woman sits across from me, clutching a bag too small for her sorrow. And I tell her the same thing Jesse told me. You're not done. You're just getting started. Sometimes the worst betrayals come from the ones who share your blood. But that doesn't mean they define you. And sometimes the most broken things carry the sharpest truth. You just have to be brave enough to open the bag. Thanks for sticking with me through this journey. If you found strength or solace in this story, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. And I'll see you in the next one.